STEM Prime Research Cast.
It is the week of July 26th, 2020. Welcome to the STEM Prime Research Cast. This is episode number 9, Privacy and Security. Now, okay, as always, I want to remind any new listeners, how does that make sense? Inform any new listeners that I highly suggest that if the material here interests you at all, to go back to the first episode and listen through all of the episodes up until now. First and second episodes are, I just have to say this, it took me an episode or two to get used to the camera. So just be aware of that, but the information is important. So I also have supplied what I call the STEM Prime edibles. You can find them on the YouTube channel or as well as on Anchor or Spotify or any of the others. By the way, all of the links will be in the episode description. So if you have a preferred podcast platform, just check out the links underneath. And if it's not there, know that I will at some point get it up on Apple Podcasts and the others. Okay. So yeah, I suggest, at least getting a good feel for what has been talked about. The edibles would be a good way to quickly catch up and know what's going on. Let's see here. Okay, updates and announcements. First things first, new microphone. I like the sound, much cleaner, much easier to edit. So I've already done a couple test runs, and I'm super impressed with the quality and the sound as opposed to the lapel mic. So yeah, hopefully that works out. Next, interviews. We're going to start interviews soon. I have, throughout this time, kind of added to a list of people that I've been in contact with and have asked to be interviewees on the Research Cast. And yeah, they've all agreed. They just said, let us know when you want to do it. So it is about that time. I've got a few more kind of major episodes left, but I believe I can start kind of weaving interviews into those topics. So maybe, every other episode will be an interview episode, and we'll just kind of weave it in with the topic of that episode. I will have it correlate with, their particular profession. So I think it'll work out well. I'm excited about that. Third, I'm trimming the fat. I have begun to work 2 days a week with my wife at the shop, which has taken away an enormous amount of time from my business and what I'm doing, but which also means I'm going to have to cut back on several things. So just to let you know, these aren't being cut. They're just being put on ice for now. We'll see how everything turns out. T-shirts and swag, I'm putting it on ice. Giveaways, putting that on ice. The post-scarcity contest, I'm putting that on ice. I think I've accidentally, or not accidentally, I guess it was an accident, but I think I designed it to be too, I don't know, too difficult maybe, requiring such a large essay, and I don't know. I think I just designed it inadvertently to be much more difficult than I think a contest like this should be. So for now, I'm putting it on ice, but we will see. I'm probably going to have to rearrange it, restructure it, totally redesign it, but hopefully get it back up there soon. Let's see. Study update. Okay. So we've got the Terra Prime and Stem Prime simulation. That's kind of the first studies that I am doing. But for that, there's a predecessor. So I'm doing, I haven't named it or anything yet. It's just simply the predecessor to the Stem Prime and Terra Prime simulation studies. And as I'm going through the data, see, I've pulled data from the U.S. Department of Labor, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, USA.gov, United Census Bureau, Bureau of Labor Statistics, and a couple of other sources. The problem that I am immediately running into is that the data is there that I need. However, the way I need to sort it and order it and group things is not something I can do programmatically. It's just that particular aspect of that data that I need just is not there. Which, unless I can figure out a sneaky, smooth way to do it, I'm going to have to be doing the ordering by hand. And considering that we're talking about at least 500,000 records, I'm trying to figure this out, but as soon as the data is all ordered and grouped and figured out, the rest of the project should move along pretty quickly. The development and the graphing and all that stuff should come along pretty fast. So I'll keep everybody up to date on that. I'm not sure whether or not I want to continue. As I said before, I'm cutting the fat. Continue to look for interns. I do have the job offered up on an intern sort of website for the University of Utah and for Westminster. But yeah, I'm thinking about this. I would love to have a couple of interns helping me with this, but at the same time, I'm just so incredibly busy. I don't want to waste their time and make it not worth something for them. Let's see. Oh, okay. Last announcement. So I am working on something called Substrate FMS. This is actually the GitHub page. I'm going to, well, I guess it's up, whatever. Don't know, can you see it from there? Can you see it from there? It doesn't even matter. This is sort of on the side for right now, but I believe this could open up new doors for machine learning, possibly. And I should have a fairly decent working model up by the end of, mid next month. And we'll see how this goes. The tougher parts of it are going to be coding up the genetic algorithm and the AI, but without giving away too much, it's very cool. I'll just leave it at that. It's a super cool project. So it should help a lot with a bunch of stem drive, just how the stem drive is constructed. It should help a lot with a bunch of other things too, in a bunch of other industries. So we'll see. It should, but you know how things go. All right, so let's move on to the meat of the episode. This lecture episode is on privacy and security, and I've actually got a very interesting segment I'm adding at the very end here. It's going to be graphically represented. I've prepared a couple of graphics, and I'm going to use my tablet here to draw/walk you through the idea. But let's start from the top here. Okay, so here is my prediction/warning. This impacts everything from privacy to economic stability. This has to do with our socio-technological capacity for progress and privacy and the inherent economic instability of the system. I just like to remind you that the entire structure of our economy is predicated on the idea that we have a value system in our minds. Okay, it is totally ethereal. The value system that we have decided to structure our world around is completely an idea. That's it. It's a fabrication of just emotions, really. I mean, when it comes down to it, that's what our economy is. The technological advancements that are going to happen the second a quantum computer is capable of solving NP-complete problems, and even in the matter of days, even in the matter of months, even in the matter of 5 years, if it can solve an NP-complete problem in the matter of 5 years, our world will be so utterly changed technologically. That exponential ramp of technological advancement is not going to be exponential anymore. It is going to be a factorial curve. It's going to just go, because that will open the doors to just immense amounts of advancements and achievements and discoveries. We will enter this era where we are basically in a race. I don't even know how to describe it. It's a race of technology against itself. All right, so what does this have to do with STEM theory? Let's break it down like this. As we've gone over before, money is a low idiophysical system. Money has an extremely low idiophysical coupling, which means, by definition, it means that money is of the realm of the idea. It's ethereal. It's in the mind. It's not real. It's an agreement. It's a set of agreements that we have between each other. Okay? But these agreements carry a lot of information. And as long as we stick to a system where our main agreement for what value is has a low idiophysical coupling, as long as we stick to a system where we are using money, where we're using something of low idiophysicality in order to interact with each other and distribute produce and purchase things and sell things. As long as we are using that sort of a system, money will never be safe. Ever. Because it will always be built on another system that can be manipulated. Do you see what I mean? Anything that is that is low idiophysicality, anything that has a low idiophysical coupling, necessarily cannot be kept safe from technology. Because it is just information, which means that you have to use information constructions to keep it safe. Did you get what I'm trying to say here? You cannot keep money safe. You just can't. Because it is not real. The only way to put money into the world, to put this agreement that we have in our minds between ourselves into the world, is by turning it into information. And anytime you turn something into information and putting it out into the world, by its very nature, you cannot keep it safe. There is no way to keep it safe. Because it will always be protected by rules and nonsense that only other rules and nonsense can keep safe. That's all encryption is. Encryption is just an attempt to keep an idea safe. You cannot keep the ethereal safe because it's not real. It's just information. It's just out there. It's not anything that is actually substantial. But we will hit this threshold where the technological advancements and what you can do with them will always make information unsafe. The new advancement will always have something about it that will make the previous implementation of information safety not as safe anymore. So we're always going to have this race. As long as we keep information, keep our economy, the security of our economy built onto this little ethereal thing, built onto this little wad of nonsense, right? This little, ball of agreements with each other and subjective values. We're going to be in this continual attempt to keep it safe. Okay. They're going to be nipping at each other's heels, like every step of the way. Now, here's a problem. As technological advancement continues to skyrocket and continues to climb faster and faster and faster, this race, this attempt to keep this stuff safe will become untenable. At some point, it will become totally untenable. You cannot keep this structure safe anymore because, at first we're going like this. Here's security, right? You have your security and information, right? And you're okay, super safe. You just used all the technology to make it super safe. And then technology comes and makes it available, more and more available to crack it for more and more people. So now this has to leap ahead again. So you're doing this constant battle, this leap. But up until now-ish or sometime very, very, very soon, the nipping at each other's heels is going to have to move so fast that we aren't going to be able to keep up with it. Like us as beings, as, objective observers of what's happening, we are not going to be able to keep up with it. The advancements are going to happen so fast that in order to send everybody a new cell phone every 3 seconds, just so you can keep up with how fast the new advancements are just, discoveries and advancements are shooting through the roof, and how fast that's being implemented into the computers, and how fast that's, altering the way information and data is being perceived and manipulated. There's no way you're going to be able to distribute enough physical devices to keep everybody else's safety up to speed with how fast technology is advancing. Do you understand what I'm saying? You just can't do it. We will hit this barrier, this threshold, where it becomes utterly untenable, completely 100%, it will not be doable. That's a problem. That's an inevitability that is going to happen, whether or not we solve the problem with the quantum computers breaking encryption schemas. We will still hit that point if we continue to go. It will be this ramp, and we just will not be able to keep up with itself. It will not be able to keep up with itself. We will not be able to update the world fast enough to make the world safe from the advancements that are happening in the labs. I hope this is getting through to you. If you don't know what I'm talking about, sit down for a second and think about this. It's just not doable. It's not something we are capable of doing physically. We just cannot do it. And the reason we cannot do it physically, I mean, I already talked about that. But what I'm trying to say now is the fact that our entire security kind of structure is based on ideas and agreements and things that are ethereal and information, right? What am I trying to say now? I just lost my train of thought. Ugh. Yes. Okay. What I'm trying to say is the things that we are trying to protect are ethereal. Okay? Privacy, honestly, it's really an ethereal concept. Though it should still be valued. I think we should try to definitely keep privacy solid. I mean, I don't know. That's a whole nother topic, but the economy, the economics, the money, the fact that money is by definition has no actual coupling with reality. It's totally just down here and just not there. It has a low idiophysical coupling, which means that the information to convey that, convey this system between each other, has to bounce back and forth between physical objects that can translate that into something that we can understand. But the technological advancements are going to happen so fast at a point in the near future that in order there's going to be a threshold where you just cannot propagate that next step in advancement across to everybody fast enough to keep everybody safe. Advancement's going to move so fast that we're just not going to be able to do that. What I'm saying is it is not physically possible to do that at some point. Now, I believe this is an inevitability. I think there will be a point where this is going to happen. And like I said, whether or not we somehow pass that quantum computational, a barrier of being able to just decrypt any encryption scheme rather quickly, whether or not we survive that somehow, we will at some point have to deal with that next barrier. And now, like this quantum computational barrier, I don't know that it's a barrier, but this obstacle that is approaching. It's sort of a crossroad, right, of two things, of an idea and technology and how we're going to handle that. And then we have the next one with technology itself, right? The next sort of we'll call it a barrier, okay? It's some sort of border, some sort of thing we're going to have to figure out how we're going to overcome it. I believe that those aren't the only two that we're going to see. Another one that we are aware of is the singularity. Wouldn't really call it a crossroads, but it is something that we are aware that is approaching us, temporarily getting closer and closer. It's something out there that is going to happen at some point. I believe there are other such crossroads and barriers that we just can't even fathom right now. But when advancement and technology starts moving at such an incredibly rapid pace, even hundreds of thousands of times faster than it's doing now, we're going to have entire factories, just, I don't even know if you would call them factories, just huge networks of artificial intelligent agents, just like cranking out theories and concepts and working with each other. And they're the ones that are doing the manufacturing and developing new ideas and just crunching everything out. There will be, I believe, other such crossroads and obstacles and weird barriers that will come at an ever increasing rate. They will approach even faster and faster and faster. And we're going to have to figure out how to deal with them at an ever increasing rate of trying to figure that shit out. And at some point, we're going to have to hand it over to the computers to do it. We're not going to be able to cognitively handle the onslaught of these barriers. We're just not going to be able to do it. We're going to have to hand the job over full time to the machines to handle this shit as it happens. So I think some of them, we can identify, like what I've talked about here. The singularity, we've identified where we're thinking, kind of ruminating about how to handle these things as they approach. But I think others will just totally blindside us. We will not have even seen them coming, right? We'll be able to sort of see things as they come into focus. Oh, I think I see something coming. Oh, now I get it. It's making sense. Oh, hey, it's a singularity. Oops, right? And then it happens. And, this whole thing that I've been talking about, right? It's starting to come into focus. And then, oh, shit, here it comes. And then we'll try to hurry and, take care of it. I would be surprised if such barriers and crossroads and whatever you want to call it, if there aren't other things out there that we just are completely oblivious to, that just blindside us, just hit us upside the head from the left, out of nowhere, didn't even see it coming. And that's another sort of thing to kind of trip on, I guess. But all that is scary enough and frightening enough to, put your head in a just spin right off your neck. But I would be, it's scary enough to think that these things are going to happen and we can see them approaching. It's even scarier to think that some of them we're not going to see. They're just going to blindside us. Some of them may just happen. Like, they won't even need a ramping up time. It'll be more of just like two things happen at the same time and poof, off it goes. Like, oh shit, nobody even thought about that. It wasn't even something you could have seen happening. It's not even something you could have, even if you're watching everything and trying to figure out like how it's all going to happen and react with each other in the next 2 days, it wouldn't even happen. It's just not something you would even possibly ever be able to predict. It's just two things happen at the same time, randomly out of nowhere, and off it goes. A good example would be if some garage genius out there actually just solves NP, right? The P and P problem, and proves that P is equal to MP. That would be an immediate world fuck. It would just, I can't even fathom how insanely that would impact our world. It would be an immediate impact that would just echo across the globe over and over and over and over and over, and we would never, ever have seen it coming. Okay. The question is, are we going to find and adopt a better and a higher idiophysically coupled system for our economy not economy, an epiconomy, some sort of high idiophysically coupled system? Are we capable of finding and implementing that before shit hits the fan? A better method for resource allocation and distribution. Are we capable of doing that? Are we capable of accepting that this is an inevitability? Are we capable of accepting that shit, dude, maybe money really is not a good idea, especially at this stage of our technological evolution? Are we willing to accept that and then do something about it? That's the question. Because if we're not, this isn't just like fanciful nonsense, dude. This is shit that's going to happen. There's like not really any question about it. These things are coming, and it will devastate everything if we don't figure out how in the fuck we are going to prepare for it. Straight up. That is like 100% fact there. Do you know how long it takes to develop a new robust encryption scheme and test it and make sure that it is stable? You think we'll be able to do that fast enough to keep up with a quantum computer that can just crack them like walnuts? What I'm trying to say is, if we want to even have the chance of surviving this upcoming onslaught of crazy little barriers that are obviously there, and they're coming, and we should all be going, oh shit, here it comes right now. Like that's how close it is to happening. But we're not. We're just like, depositing our checks and blah, 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 doing all the dumb shit that we're doing. We're not even, we are so distracted with everything else right now that this may very well blindside us. But yeah, we need to figure out a more stable method for keeping our economy online and in check, or we're screwed. Like, flat out. We will not be able to make it past this point without reverting back to paper and coins. Like, 100% across the board, paper and coins. And even at that, we're still not safe, dude. We are already at a point where we can print out fake money fast. Like, all you need is a good printer, an artistic eye, and know your shit. And it's going to be even less secure. Of course it's going to be even less secure. What am I even saying? What I am saying is that we need to get rid of this whole idea of money, or we are fucked. Like, didn't I just lay it out for you? Is that not the absolute proof that you need to hear? That if we do not stop using money like little tools, we are going to fucking destroy ourselves. You don't have to listen to me if you don't want to, but okay. So just so you can kind of feel a little safer with the STEM epiconomy, if we were to instantiate and get moving right now, implementing the STEM epiconomy, the AI STEM drive, everything about it, let's talk about really quickly how secure we would be, okay? At least for the first little while. Well, financial drives to steal information and commit crimes is gone. You get rid of money, you get rid of financial drives. That's just the fact of the matter. You get rid of money, you get rid of the financial incentives to commit crimes, to steal, to all that shit. Then the ever-accelerating need to divert resources to maintain security, okay? As technology increases, there's an accelerating need to divert resources to maintain the security of that system. Well, it's not going to be like that, because you're not trying to protect something that's not there. It's steady, it's there, it's solid, it's keeping everybody happy and healthy. And it's reduced back to, you're not projecting these things in the form of money, from your mind out into the world. Everything that is necessarily mental, right, necessarily subjective, is kept inside you. The feed works backwards. You're not projecting the shit out into the world and trying to work without here. You're letting the world and manipulating the world to work with you in here. You could say that the STEM economy, you could say it like that, right? And then even under a STEM economy, you would still need security on some level, right? Because you still have information exchange, and you're still using computers and information to deliver data. But the drive to break in and steal information and steal people's money and crack encryption schemes and all that stuff, that drive, the financial drives, are gone. There may be other drives. I'm not saying that there's not. There could be, somebody breaks up with his girlfriend and he gets all pissed and he wants to go, put her nude pictures up all over the internet or steal her, pictures from her home network or whatever and go stray them all over the internet. So we would still have people working on security, but now we have people working on security that are self-actualizing, because that's what the entire STEM economy is about, and the AI STEM drive is about. So the people that are working on security, people that are self-actualizing, pay much more attention to their task and to their job and to their, their function, and end up producing a higher quality result and they have a higher productivity. So I don't think it would be something that we would need to really worry about under a STEM economy. Foresight is that people that are self-actualizing have a much better, a clearer picture of what reality is. They have better foresight, and we don't say, no, you can't do that, it's going to take too much funding. We don't have these funding bottlenecks. So people that are self-actualizing, right, and they want to do security, they're looking at these situations and making sure we're ready for them. With the whole quantum computer, we would have just as much, if not more, energy being directed into how are we going to handle security after this sort of quantum computational threshold where we can break encryption easily. After we hit that point, how are we going to handle security and privacy? People would be looking at that much more, because it would be something on our minds. It would be something that is there to investigate, and it's a problem. And people that are self-actualizing, that are into that field, they would be on that like flies on honey. But you can't do that in this world. You can't implement those thoughts that come from such open-minded foresight, because it doesn't make money to answer those questions right now. God, we're so just fucking downward spiral right now. It's so crazy. Anyway, Do I have anything else? Oh, okay. I'm going to end this episode. Make sure if you're listening to this to jump to the YouTube channel and watch the last part of this. I'll put a link right underneath the YouTube episode with the timestamp, so you can just jump right to the timestamp. But I'm going to outline something for you specifically for a sort of communication security model for computers. Before I do that, actually, yeah, no, we're just going to do that. I wanted to talk about an AI-friendly detection method that I've been toying around with, but I'm yeah, let's just jump to this. I'm pretty sure this is already long enough. Okay, so I will just say right now this is FTL probabilities, faster than light probabilities. And just to wet your tongue, there are several reasons why, you know what? Nope, let's just cut to it. Okay. All right, so what you are seeing is a representation of two arrays between two people. Now, before you dismiss anything I say out of hand, okay, let me explain everything that this is all about, and hopefully you'll be able to understand where I'm coming from. Okay, first things first. Faster than light communication is impossible, correct? Okay, here is a representation of two particles that are entangled. There's a reason for their structure. I will explain that later. But for now, let's just write each one of these. This guy over here. Okay, so this guy over here is particle 1. Let's give you a better arrow than that. Okay, this guy over here is particle 2. And they are entangled. Okay? Now, let's say that we've got Bob and Alice, and they want to communicate. And so Bob's got his little particle over here. And they decided that if, you know, a good way to communicate is to send binary, ones and zeros. So Bob wants to collapse his particle. Okay, so when Bob collapsed his particle, Alice's particle was also collapsed immediately. So if Alice goes to check on her in her box, all right, she opens her box, flips back the lid, and she looks in, she's going to see a collapsed particle. The problem here is Alice is not going to know whether or not Bob collapsed the particle or Alice collapsed the particle. There's no way of knowing. Therefore, there really is no way to communicate through entanglement by collapsing the waveforms or the wave functions. Okay, what I would like to propose is a sort of different method that doesn't actually use any communication, but only the probability of a communication. How this is going to work, or how I see this working. Okay, over here we've got Bob, right? We've already established Bob and Alice. Okay, now Bob has an array of particles, and Alice has an array of particles. Here they are represented as two arrays of 10, but in actuality, it would be two arrays of several thousand or several 100,000 at least. And there is a reason for this. Okay, now this little orange section you see here, and this one right over here, these are both parity. They're your parity arrays, and we'll discuss why that's important in a minute. Okay, if you're familiar with the uncertainty principle, this states that if you have a particle, fun little particle, okay, and you want to know its location, okay, so its location in space-time, right? Boop, 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 right? So here it is right here. What Heisenberg's uncertainty principle states is that you can either know so much about its position or so much about its momentum, and as you know more about its position, you lose more information about its momentum. Okay, you can think of it like a pair of scissors, or like two sticks that cross in the center and are fixed in the center like that. Okay, now let's call this this whole area is position. Okay, same with over here, position, and this is momentum. And this isn't actually position and momentum. This is your knowledge of its position and or momentum. As your knowledge of the particle's momentum increases, then your knowledge of the particle's position decreases. And vice versa. As your knowledge of the particle's position increases, your knowledge of the particle's momentum decreases. Now, there are several really good videos on YouTube that explain this really well. Veritasium has one or two, I think. And the PBS is the space-time. What's that guy's name? I cannot remember his name. Anyway, he has a really good video where he talks, he walks you through Doppler radar, or a radar, Doppler radar? I don't know. It might just be radar, but he talks about how the wave, as it goes out, and you're trying to find something that's moving fast. In order to get higher resolution, you need a higher frequency. Anyway, it's a really good video. I'm not gonna go through it all right here, but he explains it really well why this dynamic is, and that it's actually just a natural dynamic. It's not specific to quantum mechanics. It's a natural dynamic across several different types of systems. So the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, specifically for quantum mechanics, is what we're going to be talking about here, though. Okay, now here we have, here we've got Bob analysis, singular particles, okay? Each one of these two particles represents the entire array of both of their systems, except for the parity bits. But let's take a look at this, okay? Now, the reason why Heisenberg's uncertainty principle works, or not the reason why it works, but it isn't just position and momentum that are affected here, or that have this sort of relationship, okay? Another relationship, that the relationship we are interested in, is the relationship between polarity and spin. Okay. Now, polarity and spin have exactly the same sort of relationship that position and momentum have when we're talking about uncertainty. So, as you hone in on exactly a particle's polarity, the knowledge of the particle's spin is turned in more and more into a probability. Likewise, the more and more you hone in on a particle's spin, the more and more the polarity turns into a probability. So, the reason why this is important to understand is because there is an interesting thing that can happen. There's an experiment called the Stern-Garlock experiment, where they heated up silver particles, silver ions, and they heated them up, and they sent them down this large sort of I don't know, like trough, right? And the trough, I guess it was shaped more like this, had a point that came down like this, and the particles were sent from here down through this way. Okay, without going into too much detail, and suffice it to say that the Stern-Garlock experiment showed that a particle's polarity, or I'm sorry, the particle's spin, well, and by which the particle's polarity, the wave function could be collapsed partially. We could achieve a partial wave function collapse. Now, there's a few other experiments that show a very similar effect, where, for example, as you collapse a particle's, polarity or spin across the z-axis, it will maintain that collapse until you collapse it across the x-axis, and then all of a sudden the z-axis is back into superposition. However, there's a certain amount of coherence. Okay, so you can collapse the particle in partially, across an axis, or across a plane, or any sort of dimension of that particular aspect of the particle that you're attempting to collapse. What the Stern-Garlock experiment showed is that you can actually collapse wave functions partially, not fully. You don't have to fully collapse a wave function. So, now let's think about this. What we are going to do here is, over here with Bob's particles, as opposed to Alice's, Bob, we're going to be working with polarity. Okay. Now, Alice's particles, over here on Alice's side, we are going to be working with spin. And we'll get to this in a second. Just understand that the key ideas here that we need to understand are, one, that we can have a partial wave function collapse, and two, that the relationship between Bob's and Alice's particles is polarity to spin. Okay? We're not attempting to measure or do anything across the same property, and we're not even really attempting to do that, because this is only probability. And just follow me. I'm going to explain this in a second. Okay. Wasn't really trying to make this look strange or anything, but if it does, I apologize. At any rate, let's suppose that these three axes, okay, let's suppose we're working across three measurement perspectives of each, of polarity and spin. So this is just really representational that, this is like polarity this way, and polarity this way, or polarity across the x-axis, polarity across the y-axis, and polarity across the z-axis, sort of thing. Okay. So here we have the representation of Bob's particle having been collapsed across one particular axis, or very specific polarity across one axis. Okay. So now we've collapsed. Bob's collapsed his particle on purpose. Okay. And now over here, because this now is representational of spin, all right, Alice's particle has also collapsed across that same dimension. This should be how it actually works in reality. Okay. If these two particles are entangled and Bob's particle over here gets collapsed across whatever, polarity sort of dimension that we're going to try to work with or tinker with here, whether it's an actual, polarity, like how light is, if you're polarizing, dimensionally across axes, or if we're polarizing across, magnetic polarization, north-south sort of a thing. The fact of the matter is that this is what we're talking about here. Okay, we're just talking about the polarity and the spin, period. So now Bob's particle is entangled partially to Alice's particle, and it has collapsed only partially. Okay, both have collapsed partially. Now we're looking at their two systems. We've got Bob over here, we've got Alice over here, and Bob has gone ahead and he has collapsed each particle in his array across one particular dimension of polarity. And we're representing it as three dimensions of polarity. Take it as you will. This is I'm just, relaying the concept. All right. This isn't actually how this would look or work or anything. I'm relaying the concept of how it could possibly work. Now you're going to understand why this section right here, why the parity sections are important in a moment. Because so far this isn't telling us anything, right? This doesn't really make sense. Okay, so how are they going to communicate? Well, don't forget, we are not actually communicating. We are only sending a most likely probability. Okay, what Alice is going to eventually uncover here is the most likely probability of what Bob might have wanted to send. All right. This is not a direct message. This is only a probability of a message. That's key to understanding how this would work. One, because you cannot send direct data like this. It is just not possible. Okay? A hard, solid stream of information is impossible to send across in this sort of manner. But we are not attempting to send a hard, solid stream of information in the system. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be sending a probability, or not even sending, we are going to be inducing a probability of a message that Bob only may be trying to send. Okay, so now we see that Bob has, over here, he has collapsed all of his particles in across the specific direction and across the specific polarity that he has tuned his instruments to. Now, the polarity, the actual polarity, doesn't matter so long as it is the same polarity and dimension across each particle. Okay? Now, being as such, as I said before, Alice's do the same thing. So, Bob's going to go ahead and collapse. He's going to, whatever mechanism, whatever, it doesn't matter if we're doing spin and polarity or momentum and direction or position or anything else, as long as we have enough vector or enough axes to work with here, and as long as Bob only collapses it partially across at least 1/3 of the possible configurations. So this is north all the way down, right? North, south. He puts a one-dimensional field across these, or a two-dimensional, field across these particles, and only across one axis. And so he only collapses them across that one particular axis. Now, keep in mind, these are still entangled with these guys over here. So if he collapses these guys across this one axis, across a very, in a very specific direction of polarity, Alice's are going to collapse in a similar fashion, right? So if you have, a particle and you don't know if it's up or down, you have another, and they're entangled, okay, and then Bob collapses his, and it happens to end up. Well, we know that when Alice looks at hers, it's going to be down, right? That's just the nature of how this works. So Bob's going to partially collapse his across one axis in a very specific direction of polarity. So Alice's are going to collapse exactly opposite of how Bob's have collapsed. So when Alice goes and exposes the film per se, right? She opens the closet door and everything collapses. There's going to be a subtle difference between the distribution pattern of the collapse if Bob does apply the field versus if Bob doesn't apply the field. Okay, in order to follow what we were talking about here, let's go back to your traditional example of what happens when two entangled particles are collapsed. Okay, so over here we've got Bob's array, and we've got Alice's array over here. Now, the traditional or commonly used example is the spin of the particle as it is collapsed. So we've got Bob's particle here, Alice's particle here. Now, Bob collapses his particle, and come to find out, it is spin up. Now we know that Alice, when she goes to look at her particle, it is going to be spin down. Okay, now let's think about what the state of the polarity is going to be for these two particles. Bob collapses his particle to a definite spin state, which means the polarity across the same axis that spin is across, the polarity is going to be a big unknowability. It's going to be a probability. It's going to be a very big cloud of of polarity probability. Same with Alice's, right? Okay. Now, let's go back and take a look at what's going on here. Bob is going to apply a field across one axis with north all the way down one side, south all the way down the other side. So what Bob is essentially doing here is he's constraining the polarity across one axis to this configuration, okay? So all the particles down here are going to be constrained to this sort of planar field, magnetic field, which means that the spin, right, of this particle across that axis has become highly unknowable. The highest possible unknowability for the spin, okay? So what's happening over here with Alice's particles? Well, we've got the polarity is being anchored to this plane, to this axis, right? And so we essentially have collapsed it, north and south, but we've only collapsed it partially. We've collapsed 1/3 of what we could possibly collapse. And we've got the other two axes, okay, that are still in utter unknowability. But this is just the polarity. Let's look at Alice's for a second. Across this axis, okay, the spin has increased in its unknowability. Okay. Same with this guy, right? Increase in unknowability for the spin. Because its polarity has been tied down. Now we have the other two axes that are still just normal distribution across both properties. Now, let's think about what's going to happen when Alice comes over here and decides to just collapse them all together. And after she's collapsing them, she's going to look at the collapse distribution, how they all end up, okay? So Alice is more concerned with spin. She doesn't care about the polarity at all. Bob is the guy over here. He's the polarity guy. Alice is all about spin. So she's just going to open up each one of these packages and look at the spin as, after it collapses and the distribution of the spins. And what Alice is going to find, theoretically, right? This hasn't been put to the test or anything. I'm just saying. What Alice may find is that the spin distribution across these two axes are going to be about the same, but the spin distribution across these two is going to be different. I would surmise that as Alice opens up each package, package 1, package 2, package 3, 4, all the way down to the several 100,000 in her array. Remember, this is only representative. We wouldn't have just 5. There would be several 100,000. And then she's going to do something interesting. She's going to open all of hers. Okay? So she's going to open everything down here and catalog it. And then she's going to open everything over here, or collapse everything, and catalog their states. She's going to open up, or she's going to collapse each one and look at their spin states, and she's going to look at the distribution of the spins. Now, I would surmise that simply because of this, what Bob has done over here, having affixed it across one polarity, and thereby affixing Alice's across the the opposing polarity, that as Alice cracks hers open and collapses them, that the distribution of the final spin state for all of her particles would be different for these ones versus for those in her parity set. Remember, the parity set is not even touched. The Alice's parity particles are entangled with Bob's parity particles, and it's just there for parity. It's just there for this specifically, for checking the collapse distribution. So as Alice collapses both sets, I would surmise that the spin distribution as these collapse across their axes, or however this is configured, right? However you want to set this up, as she collapses it across whatever property and configuration and axes and whatever, that the spin, or that the distribution of whatever property it is, spin, polarity, whatever, as long as it is in a relationship with whatever property Bob is working with, in the this relationship, in the perpendicular uncertainty. Does that relationship even have a name? The uncertainty principle relationship, property relationship. That the distribution of these states would be just slightly different than what we would find over here. Now, if this holds, if this actually works, given that this isn't actual information that's being sent, this is only probabilities, because this, when you collapse this is really just a probability that it's why you have to have so many in the array, because you're going to have to look at all of them, and then you're going to have to calculate the probability distribution across all of them. But I would surmise that these over here would have a slightly different collapse distribution than these guys over here in her parity set. So, because she can't totally be sure, and because she's just taking a statistical likelihood, she's just looking at the statistical likelihood of, it's just slightly more likely that Bob is sending a 1 instead of a 0. It's just slightly, right? It's just slightly different, okay? So if for instance, I don't even know how you would, what a distribution set would look like for spin and collapse, but let's just make something up here. That this is your parity set, okay? That if your active set, right, would look just slightly different, just a little difference, not enough to be sure about, because really, what is there to be sure about? It's a tiny little portion. You're collapsing, just this tiny little 1/2 of 1/6 of a direction of one particular property or whatever. So you're just gonna have to go through each one and add them all up, right? And look for the average distribution, the minute deviation in the difference between set A and set B, between her parity set and her active set. So that's that. That is that. And yes, this would all be probabilities and what is most likely here. And it is not direct information, and it is quite likely that it could be wrong, especially if you were just working with one particle. You would definitely not hit the mark a good majority of the time. But being that you're working with multiple particles, I think you would be able to get a fairly decent sense for whether or not Bob is trying to send a 1 or a 0. Anyway, I've totally, utterly confused myself just trying to explain this. I thought I had this nailed down better in my mind than I really did. But that's the basic idea behind this. If this worked, we could have... See, it wouldn't be faster than light communication. It would be faster than light, most probably a communication kind of a thing. Anyway, that is... I need to just shut up and stop now. But yeah, that's it. That's also, this would be between two computers. If they were using this, and if they had their arrays and they had some sort of, statistical analysis thing going on, this would be the absolute most secure method for two computers to communicate. Yeah, you're going to run into, problems of, well, how do you reset the links between two particles, and how do you do some sort of timing? You would have to have some way of devising the timing. Well, so then you kind of run into the problem of how do you first problem, if this worked. Okay, if this worked. First problem is, how do you reset? Okay. Good question, good problem. I have no idea. Second problem is timing. Well, let's say we solve the reset problem. Okay, we know how to reset the connection between every particle after every collapse. After every time Alice collapses her entire set, we can reset all the particles for both the parity set and the active set. Okay. Well, how do we know when to look for a message? The best way I can think of doing this would be to have Alice check, every 1/5 of a second, and then have Bob send a binary digit every 1 second. So Alice's feed, after the computer's reset and after all the statistical crunching here, that would give us the maybe it's a 1 kind of a probability. We would have something, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we would have 1, 2, 3, and then a statistical difference there, and then it would go back, and then a statistical distance or statistical variance here, and then it would go back. And the thing is, if Bob was sending 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, right, you would have, let's say, 1, and then 0, and 0, and then 1, and then 1. So you would have to do yet another analysis and say, okay, there's a bump here, there's a bump here, there's a bump here.
this distance here seems to be the most regular across the entire feed, right? Because we're not just, this isn't the only thing that's being sent. It's like a big long stream. But there's, you can calculate these little blank areas and then just insinuate that, oh, that's probably a 0. So you have, your probable 1s, and then your probable 0s, and then your probable 1s. And that's how Alice would have to decipher it. Now, because in the nature of this system, none of this, the only way to get a good sense of whether or not you're really onto something is to just really fill up your arrays. Make sure you've got like 100,000 active particles, 100,000 parities, particles in your parity arrays. So, you're dealing with 100,000 entanglements here, but right, if you were just doing it with one, you're just simply because of the statistical probability, the nature of this system, and such a low statistical probability across this, like you can look at one and you're not going to be able to really tell what's going on. You need layers. You need 100,000 particles to show that over here your collapse distribution looks kind of like this, and over here your collapse distribution looks maybe it's just a little thinner and a little more bump in the middle, right? If you're to overlay them, either something like that, or maybe it would be something like that. I really don't know what the collapse distribution will look like. I'm not a particle physicist. And yeah, really, I'm pretty much just blowing smoke out of my ass with this. This is just a thought that I had that I'm just kind of putting out there because it's fun and I like to think about it. And I think it actually has a potential to, if not work, then light somebody else's, flick on somebody else's fun little light bulb in their little mind for something that might actually work. Anyway, that's it. Turn on your light bulb. Quantum physicists, tell me I'm completely stupid, that this would never work, or, tell me that there could be something here. I would love to hear back from anybody that, has more of a background in quantum physics and particle physics than I do. All right, so that is it for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me here. Again, your support is insanely important. This really is not going to go anywhere without any sort of public support. I will keep you updated on the, even if I have to do a video between now and the next episode, I'll keep you updated on the stem prime and terra prime predecessor. That should start moving along pretty quickly, and we should start seeing some interesting results and something that is at least white paper worthy within the next month or two. Again, thank you. Make sure to like, subscribe, share this with your friends and family. This is starting to, we're at the point where things are going to start picking up really quickly here. So, yeah, stoked. I'm stoked. I'm excited because I will finally be able to have something I can say, see, guys, look, if, right? If. That'll be nice. See, there's my biases. Okay, I will see you guys next time. Everybody be safe, wear your masks, and take care. Bye-bye.